Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Chapman & Co. Leadership Institute webinar on building your bench from leadership to sales. We're going to talk about how you can grow your talent. To begin with, I'm going to need to introduce to you my co-facilitator for today, and that is the managing partner of the Chapman & Co. Leadership Institute. This is Sarah Hanna. So Sarah comes to us from Fairbanks, Alaska, and the first question we asked you, and some of you might have seen that in Meant to Meet Her, was, what's the athletic talent you wish you had? Well, Sarah, she was a cross-country skier on our high school team. And I want you to know about Sarah, she seems really nice, but she's competitive and she's got a mean streak in her. And this is proof and evidence of it. It was summertime in St. Louis. We were doing something in business, building content or talking with clients. And she started talking trash to me about cross-country skiing. We weren't in the snow. We did not have skis on. I wasn't saying I'm a good cross-country skier. I've never even done it before. And she was saying that she would destroy me. And so that's a little bit about Sarah. I recommend that if you do meet her in person, you do not look her directly in the eyes or show your teeth, because in her family, it's a sign of aggression and it goes back to where she grew up in the tundra and such. So this kind of got away from us. This kind of got away from us already, didn't we?
It really did. The downs part of these introductions is I've been talking to people on the phone and people are like, are you in Alaska? And I'm like, no, I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. I just grew up there. So my co-facilitator for today is Matt Wyatt. His sport in high school, since we started down this road, was water polo. And so I'm not sure who the more aggressive person is, but recently, I'm talking in the last week, Matt said to me, do you want to know what somebody sounds like when they're underwater and they can't breathe?
No.
In the last week. But that goes back to the water polo playing days. So we're going to give you nothing of factual or helpful about ourselves today, just those tidbits about our high school sports lives.
There you go. There you go. Hey, this is what we do. So we're Chapman & Co. Leadership Institute, and at a more serious end where business and people intersect, we work with that. So we're a full-service consulting house. We do assessments, whether team, individual, culture. We've been having inclusivity assessment. We do leadership development from 360s all the way into a higher end emotional intelligence, training courses to include inclusion, workshops and keynotes when it's needed. And of course, we do consulting. A lot of the consulting we do right now is on communications, the messaging we're sending both internally and externally. I did want to mention there are two areas you have a chance to engage with us beyond this free series webinar. One is we've launched our virtual classroom. So the width and breadth of our people development and leadership curriculum, we have brought that online. And so we have tracks for whether it's individuals, teams, and the entire organization. We've got tracks for whether you're an aspiring or a frontline leader, first-time leader, middle management, senior folks. We have tracks for those, and we also have tracks for that are more topical, such as inclusion, continuous improvement, and customer service. One of the items that we have made a commitment to in light of all these recent events are to give voice to give message to put on a stage and to make more prominent those messages from Black leaders that we've associated with and that we have a huge amount of respect for. One of those people is a partner of ours, and that is Mr. Fred Falker. We ran a TED event. He was a guest speaker there, and it's a beautiful talk. We also have a course we've developed with him. It's appropriately called Include. And it's a very different take on how we build inclusivity in the workplace. Perhaps some of you were on it. We ran one session. It is available virtual and obviously in person. If you go to ccoleadership.com/resources, you can find more of those. None of it's gated. You can get right in and grab it, but I appreciate you taking a look at that and sharing amongst your teams. I promise you, you will really, really enjoy it. Some quick housekeeping as we look at one of the Brooklyn Nets players tipping over one of the high price seats there. Everyone's muted, so please use chat, everyone, and please chat to everyone and then use the Q&A functions to contribute. Just helps us answer any questions you might have. This is a really powerful tool we're going to mention to you. This is a tool that Sarah and I have built from a lot of different ways. Nothing's new here, but it's all combined into one really powerful tool. The questions you're going to have on its applicability can really help. So please ask questions and be lively in the chat. And I should have mentioned, this is not Jamie Dix today. We have another team member of ours. This is Courtney Godfrey. She's in the great city of Austin, Texas. So she's backstage and can assist as necessary if you need anything. There's also a real short survey at the end, and of course, we really value your input. Really quickly, all the slides that we're showing you today, the resources that we have, a link to this webinar recording, we're going to provide those direct to email to you, and it'll also be available on CCO Leadership. Triaging.com. In case you miss a great play that one of us makes, you will have that for yourself. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off by learning a little bit more about you. Sarah?
All right. I know most of you have joined us before and are used to this, and we might have some new folks as well. And we love to interact with you, and we use Mentimeter as a way to do it. And so what we're going to ask you to do is on your smartphone, smart device, or in a second browser, open up and go to menti.com, menti.com. It's going to ask you for a code, and that code is 894188. A lot of you are already in answering our introductory question, which is, what athletic talent do you wish you had? And it appears that the 120-mile-per-hour fastball is winning this. If the word is larger, it just means that more people have entered it in agreement. If you ever have difficulty entering anything into Mentimeter, you can go ahead and put your response into the chat, and Courtney is more than happy to put that in for you. Just a few shout outs. A person put in here, better aim at beer pong. So I'm not quite, we're going to go ahead and call that an athletic talent.
It is athletic talent, and you're welcome.
Oh, that was you. This is, I always end up calling out Matt. Like, who says these things? Of course it's Matt. There's also a person who said fast sweep curling. So good on you.
That's a good one.
I enjoyed
competitive.
Curling.
I like the one that's a competitive hot dog eater. It's not just, I'm going to eat some hot dogs. I'm going to be competitive. I'm going to take on Joey Chestnut. I'm going to talk some trash and beat that kid. All right.
Yep. All right. So these are the athletic talents we all wish we had. Another just get to know you kind of question, where in the world are you calling in from? So city, state, province, country, county, rural road, whatever you got, and go ahead and put it on. It's always fun to know who we've got out there, and you guys do not disappoint. St. Louis, of course, right here where we are. And additionally, we've got people from Great Bend, Kansas. We've got people from Dubai, India, Austin. I know the Austin people were connecting on the chat. They're going to get together once that's allowed, which we love. Prague, Canton, Ohio, Newman, Georgia.
We've got Istanbul, Turkey. What a gorgeous city. Welcome.
Right. Thank you so much. That it always makes us excited when we know we've got people literally around the world who are learning and discussing these topics. All right, a couple questions for you, a little bit more on our topic of the day. And the first one is really straightforward. I am a good problem solver. True or false? I'm a good problem solver. In my job, I do it all the time. You got a problem, I will solve it for you. This is what I've gotten promoted on. This is what I get paid to do. Perhaps it's literally part of my job. I'm an engineer. And it looks like in the bottom right-hand corner, you see the numbers. So we're always looking at that to see if we've got a good majority of people in the Mentimeter, and the more people who are in it just means the more voices we have in the conversation. So overwhelmingly, for those who have entered so far, 57 out of the 63 say, you know what, I am a good problem solver. We are going to come back to that one. Second question we have for you today. What % of leaders have received no formal leadership training? I have people in my span of care. I'm in a leadership role. And this is not an opinion question. This is out there in the world. How many have not received any kind of leadership training? And so as these come in, we're picking, you guys nailed it with the 60%. So a majority of us who lead and care for people do not receive leadership training. I will tell you, the very first time I received a direct report, they said, you're going to go down to HR and they're going to talk to you about, you know, what you should do for leading people. And I received training on how to basically track down people when they didn't show up on things like a snow day. That was the width and breadth of the leadership training that I received. So we've come a long way from that point. All right, we're going to bring you back into the slides. And we're going to kind of get into your answers to those questions. But before we do that, I'm going to ask you to do something, and then I'm going to ask you to sit with it. And this is all going to make sense in a little bit. But I want you to hold in your mind a problem or dilemma that you currently have. It can be personal or professional. One that you would be willing to talk about it. Do not worry, we're not going to make you talk about it. But that you would be willing to talk about. One that you think, you know what, I could use some coaching help on this one. It'd be really good to talk to somebody. And it doesn't have a solution, or you're not happy with the solution. You're just kind of unsettled about it. So I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds to kind of think about, like, what is a problem that you are currently wrestling with that you would enjoy coaching help on? And I'm just going to ask you to hold it. Maybe you want to write the problem down on a scrap piece of paper, whatever is helpful to you. I'm going to go ahead and jot that down. All right, and we're going to come back to that one. As we move into these, this is the kind of the construct that we're going to be working through. This is build your bench, kind of how do you develop your talent, any department or any team that you happen to be leading. We acknowledge that for a lot of us, perhaps our team circumstances have changed, given the recent events related to COVID. Perhaps I have new team members, perhaps I've lost team members, perhaps I'm rebuilding my team, and perhaps I have the exact same team that I had before. In any of those scenarios, these things are really important. One is to pause and reflect on what's the role of leadership in building talent. How can we use this tool, the power of questions, which is the main thing that we're going to be talking about in all of these circumstances, and how do we apply it to other areas outside of just coaching individuals, but into sales, into engineering, into some of the other disciplines. But where we're going to start is with what's the role of leadership. As with a lot of things that we do, the mindset is actually the really, really important part. And the reason we asked you the question, like, how many of us are good problem solvers? And the majority of us said, I'm a pretty good problem solver. We know this isn't a bad thing, but we know that a lot of us were promoted because we solve problems. We're really, really good at it. We have a lot of experience. I've seen this problem before. I can give you a shortcut. I wouldn't recommend going down that road. I would think about it this way. It's literally how a lot of us have built our careers, and that is in and of itself a perfectly fine thing. How we promote as problem solvers, efficient completion, and execution speed. I'm a really good doer. I get stuff done, and suddenly I'm promoted to be king or queen of the doers. Oftentimes when that happens, we don't sit people down and say, your job has fundamentally changed. The way your mindset towards how you approach work should fundamentally change. That the role of leadership is to build other problem solvers. And I don't necessarily need to be the one doing all the doing, but how do I create the environment, remove the obstacles, remove the barriers to create the environment for efficiency, and all of those things that might be hindering execution. So these are some famous players turned coaches that had kind of probably similar challenges. So that's where we're going to start with. We're all good problem solvers, not a bad thing, but how do we actually make that transition? We know, and this is kind of the common used term, and I'm not sure, you can put it in the chat because I know we've got people, a global audience, if the term firefighting is, I honestly don't know if that is a US-based phrase or if that's an international phrase, but if I constantly spend a lot of my time in firefighting, here's the result. One, people are less likely to own the solutions. So if it has to be my solution, then cool, I'll do it. Perhaps you're my leader and I have to, but I don't necessarily own it. As the person solving all the problems, I very, very quickly run out of time because in most organizations, we have more problems to deal with than we do have time. Oftentimes the solutions are incomplete because we don't have all of the different brains in on that particular problem. And I'm in that urgency versus importance. And so I'm going to sort to the urgency versus the things that are perhaps really, really critical. Over time, what we can see is that performance actually drops because so many problems are solved inadequately, and we miss the opportunity to kind of look at the root cause versus putting a lot of Band-Aids on things. And so while we might be good at problem solving, excellent at problem solving, there is an impact if we're only in that firefighting mode all of the time, and the tool set that we're going to walk through is how we combat that.
When we think about the visual depiction of leadership, this would be a very typical kind of, and I don't just mean the top-down structure, but I mean in general, I'm your leader, you work with me, we use these phraseology, we kind of think about our role this way. So let me just talk to you about what servant leadership actually looks like. The term is thrown around a lot. But this is the visual depiction of servant leadership. I'm your leader, I work for you. So as an example, myself being in the military, like we wore our organizational chart on our uniforms. Like it was very clear where I was in the hierarchy of the organization, where everyone else was. So I would just simply, when I took over a new squadron or a new flight or a new command, I would just draw a triangle like this one. And I would just say, hey, where am I in this triangle? And they'd say, you're at the top, sir. And I'd say, where are you? And they would point to somewhere in the middle there. I would just say, okay, well, here's how we're going to run this organization. my job is at the bottom, this is me, and I would just draw an upside down triangle. And I would say your job is to support your team, their job is to support the team, and so on and so forth. And usually you got to a point where eventually we're serving the front line. But this is the visual depiction of what a servant leader looks like, just from a mental standpoint. And I don't mean that it doesn't mean that you don't make the call, you don't set strategy, you don't enforce what the values are, but every day I'm coming to work to serve the people in my span of care, not span of control. And you might be saying, well, then why do all of our org charts look like top down? And that's a really interesting question. We love this chart. This is the New York and Erie Railroad. It's a plan of organization. This is the very first kind of formal organizational chart that was ever written. As you can see, it actually looks very organic, like almost a tree. And we've outlined each one of these here. The reason for this was, and this is right around, I think around 1860 or so, the interesting evolution of this was that the telegraph had just been invented. And for the first time ever, you could get real-time instant information back from the field, in this case, from the railroad. It was the ability to save lives. And so as you can see, the president, the board of directors, and divisional leaders, they were there to serve all of, in this case, all of the stations, all of the tracks, all of those places out there. That's how our org charts originated. The way it ended up being much more of a top-down structure is when you think about the US and you think especially about World War I and World War II, we had a lot of, in this case, men who went off to fight battles. They had to create organizations. However, in those times, we had drafts. So in other words, conscript labor, forcing people to fight in militaries during that time. And so how do you create an organizational chart of people who don't necessarily want to be there, or at the least amount, they were not volunteers? You make it top down. You put the leader and that person's in charge, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Now, coming out of these military engagements, these are people that are now running our organizations around the world. So how do we structure our org charts? Just like I was taught. The challenge is, though, now is the people in your span of care, they're volunteers. They're not conscript labor. And so the mental movement here is that I'm not on top. We don't use language like I need to get it down to its lowest level. I just talk about the depth in the organization I need to get something into. And that as a leader, I work for you. And so that's kind of the mental mindset of this. Some of you have seen this chart before. We break down how people spend time in their leadership. We break it down, leadership being working on self, working on the team, working on the business. The red block here, it's not bad. I know we're highlighting it as red just to make the difference visually so you can see it. The red block is, this isn't usually the work of leadership. The only place it would be is if perhaps you're trying to get empathy, or perhaps I'm trying to understand what the job is, so I'm doing that work. But other ways, solving people's problems, being the approval authority, answering emails, usually not the work of leadership. The work of leadership exists in those top three, and we're going to focus today on working on the team. And that's really what we're going to focus on. So Sarah, let's talk about the power of questions.
Right, the first part of this, I have to have the right mindset. I am your leader, I work for you, you're in my span of care, and my job is not necessarily always to solve your problems. So how do I actually do that or make that shift from a behavior standpoint? The first piece of it before we get into the real kind of coaching tool is to acknowledge the role of listening in this piece. And I know this comes up in a lot of our webinars. It's a thread, it's a behavior that kind of runs all the way through. But it's important to acknowledge that if we don't do this piece right, then the questioning piece is really difficult. So we acknowledge that there's three levels of listening. There is level one, which is my personal favorite. It is faux listening. It means I am not actually listening to you, to all of you that are multitasking with your email right now. You are info listening. I can see you, I can tell. There is level two. This is factual listening. I'm just listening to the facts of what you're sharing. We spend a lot of our time in factual listening. This is not necessarily a bad thing. We're collaborating, we're working on something, and we really just need to go back and forth on what's the data, what do we need to do, we need to make a decision. Level three listening is empathetic listening. Which means I'm listening to both what you're sharing, but I'm also, quote unquote, listening to the emotional component. I'm also listening to what you're not sharing. I'm making a lot of discernment in terms of what your message actually is. The level of listening that we need you to be at for this tool to be at its most impactful is empathetic listening, and that breaks down into 5 skills. The first is attending behavior. I'm fully present. I'm leaning in. I'm giving you eye contact. If I was allowed to be within 6 feet of you, this means that I'm coming around my desk and my workstation. I'm sitting in that other chair. And I'm basically saying with all of my nonverbal behavior and language that I have, I am here to listen to you. I'm giving you the acknowledgments. I'm nodding my head. I'm saying, uh-huh. I'm giving you all those verbal clues that essentially says, I really want you to keep talking. I'm giving you door openers. Door openers are those statements or open-ended questions for the purpose of that person talking more. And we're actually going to give you a little bit more on this one in just a minute. Silence. This is essentially, I'm going to give it a beat. The normal pace of business conversation especially tends to be pretty rapid fire. And in fact, if you're not actually tailgating on what somebody is saying, it's almost looked at as like, come on, you got to keep up with the pace. And so oftentimes we cut off that last beat of what somebody has actually said versus I'm just going to give it a little bit of pause. That person might actually speak more. And at the appropriate moment, I'm going to give the empathetic response. I'm going to convey that I understand. The really critical piece about this is I'm going to feed back on both the facts and the emotions, the feelings. What I hear you say is, you're really disappointed that you were passed up for that promotion. And that person says either, yes, that is what I'm trying to say, or you know what, it's not that I'm disappointed, it's that I'm really frustrated. And the point here is that I am not trying to kind of guess correctly. I'm helping the other person clarify how they are feeling. All 5 of these skills, the one thing to really remember is I am showing up in a way for that person to talk more. That's the goal, not to solve the problem. The critical difference, because this is the part where we're actually kind of speaking into the conversation, is this difference between door openers and data mining. Door openers are statements or questions that, again, invite the person to share as they would like to. Ownership of the conversation stays with that person. You think of like a spotlight, it's on them. The mindset that you want to have is, I'm interested in your thinking, tell me more. Data mining is essentially, you think about like a coach and in a press box. Like I am firing questions at you essentially because I'm trying to solve the problem. Or I'm trying to form my own opinion. I'm not actually trying to allow you the space to talk more. Ownership shifts to the person asking all of those questions. I'm literally driving, I'm steering, I'm pointing you in a direction. I can solve it. If you just give me more information, I can take this off of your plate. One of the reasons we do this is it feels really great. And a lot of times it's with good intent. Like I'm trying to get information so that I can help you. The help is actually allowing the person to process. So how do we stay in the door openers versus the data mining position? So we're going to get into this tool, but before we do, I'm going to ask you one more question in Menti, and that is, what do you think of when you hear the term coaching? And this isn't really sports coaching, but coaching in the workplace. What do you think of when you hear the term coaching? Free word association, anything goes. We're seeing a mentor, encouragement, support, someone who pushes you, listening. Thank you for that one. We'll give you the $10 after for that response. A few people for the mentoring, telling you, development, shaping, needed, okay, lacking. So whoever put that in, give us a call. We'll help out. We'll give you some coaching. So for all of these words that come in, we just want to be very, very specific that the tool that we're about to show you, and we're actually going to do a live demo, which we've never done before, so we're kind of excited about it.
It's not virtually. We do them all the time. Not
well,
virtually.
We do them all the time. Yes, we've never done one virtually. That's a good clarification. Yes. So yeah, to our volunteer that we will introduce to you in a moment. We've done it lots of times, just not on camera like this. We want to be really specific that this is not about conveying my viewpoint. This is not about pushing somebody in a direction. It is very specifically a methodology to help people see and help people think. So there's a lot of things that are subscribed to coaching. If we could think of something else to call this, we'd probably rename it, but it best fits under this umbrella. And so for our standpoint, the tool that we're going to use, I want to help you see and I want to help you think.
Yeah, and to do that, we're going to discern sometimes what our most helpful role is. Now, coaching is not when I have information that someone else needs. This is called a legitimate dependency. So in other words, if someone said to us, hey, how do I turn on my video on Zoom, or how do I change the speaker? They don't know. That's not a time to say, well, tell me more about your issue, what's going on. It's you have information that someone else needs. Perhaps you can see the rugby scrum picture here, that what if we have a thing to like ideate back and forth on, that's collaboration. Hey, I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Can we share? That's I'm in collaboration mode. Sometimes though, there's a growth opportunity. It usually looks like this person eventually is going to need the solution of this. Rather than me just telling the answer, it's probably better for them to kind of work it out on their own, and or I don't have the answer, but I'll bet they probably have some thinking inside that can help them. So your role as a coach, as Sarah mentioned, is to help them see, help them think. It's not to solve problems for them. The reason with firefighting, the reason we mention it is you just keep getting people's problems. You can be the walking human Google and just be the person that can solve all the issues, or we can use this tool to allow people to solve their problems first. And at the end, we're going to show you how this works in sales and working with clients that we use all the time. There's some benefits to listening to help others solve their problems themselves. One is I get to see how they're thinking. So if you want to know who your high potentials are, especially for people who are perhaps less expressive, if I don't fill the airwaves with the answer, I get to see what their mental state is and how they're working through a problem. They might have better issues than you do. They start developing problem-solving skills, and I don't take the firefighting on myself. I got enough things to do. I want them to continue to own the problem, and this tool allows them to get there. We're going to talk about questions we're going to ask. I'm going to hit this slide, and then I'm going to jump into the demo, then we'll come back and talk about what kind of questions we can ask. But there are three types of questions. There are closed, leading, and open, as you see as I'm looking from left to right. As I move from closed to open, the type of information that the person is being coached and the coach gets is much deeper, it's much more detailed. But I'll give you an example. Closed question, did you like this webinar? That's a yes or no. This webinar, it was great, right? That's leading. You literally have to disagree with me to answer it in the opposite. Open would be, hey, this webinar on building your bench, coaching, how was it? Completely open. That's the difference. And so I'm going to skip forward to this, and Sarah's going to introduce you to this, and we're going to bring up our volunteer here in a second. Sarah?
All right. So this is an active participation webinar for every single person who might be just listening to this in the background. We really encourage you to pay attention to this part and actively participate. What I'm going to ask you to do is pull out just a blank sheet of paper and grab a pen. And we're going to do this demo, and I want you to be looking for these three things. I want you to draw the first piece. So next to the number 1, I want you to write closed down on the piece of paper, draw a big long line, and then open on the other end. Matt is actually going to coach somebody live and demonstrate how this works. For every single question that he asks, what I want you to do is make like a little tick mark. Was it open? Was it leading? Was it closed? Every single question you're going to make a tick mark. So that's the first thing I'm going to ask you to do. The second I'm going to ask you to do is to just draw a circle, and you can just draw one circle. And I want you to kind of create a pie chart of how much time Matt speaks and how much time our coachee speaks. That's number 2. You're going to do a pie chart. And then for number 3, I just want you to write down when you notice any of the empathetic listening skills. So what attending behavior, what acknowledgments, and I know we're on video, but it's still going to happen. What were the door openers? Was there silence? Was there an empathetic response? Because you're going to be giving a grade at the end of this. So that's what you guys are going to do. Yesterday, we asked a colleague, friend of ours, if they'd be willing to participate in this demo. All that we said to her was, would you be willing to come on camera and share a problem that you were wrestling with? We know the topic of the problem. We do not know any details of the problem. So that was basically as short as the conversation was, and she is such a good human that she said, yeah, I'd be willing to do that in front of, I don't know, 100 other people. The good news is she's going to come on camera, and what we want you to pay attention to is not to Anne, but we want you to pay attention to Matt. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to pay attention to what is Matt doing and what is Matt not doing, in addition to all the copious notes that you're going to take. And so, Anne, there's not really anybody else. It's just the 3 of us. And in fact, I'm going to go off camera.
Yeah,
so it's just you and Matt hanging out. That's all.
First of all, Anne, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can.
Okay, great. Your audio is fantastic. So the problem, so why don't we just start with that? What do you got?
Alrighty. So yes, I did. I did give it a little bit of thought after we spoke yesterday, and kind of it's a little convoluted in my mind. But here's kind of where I landed. I've been in my current role for about 18 months. And my current role is leading a small team for learning and development, and been with the company for 10 years though. All right, but in this role, leader role, since for 18 months, and it's one of those things where I just I can flip back and forth from day to day, feeling like I've got this, to, oh my gosh, I hope nobody figures out that I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I kind of I go back and forth with that. So I recognize that part of that is about, just kind of working on my confidence with this. But specifically what I thought about was, I always think about when we say, oh, when you promote people. So there's part of me that thinks, what I'm really good at. I know what I'm really good at. I'm a really good tactical person. I'm very good at focused. It's if you need something done, I will get it done. I will move it. I'm customer focused. And yet those things, it's not that they're not important with what I'm doing. It's more this trying to think more strategically, but also connected with that. What I have really felt more so is, how do I get to be seen more as a partner, and how do I influence? I feel as if it's as I'm still in that role of, okay, Anne's going to be the one that's going to get it done, when
Right.
what I really need to do is influence the way that we're going about things, and what our solutions should be. And
So if I can ask you, so I hear a lot of different layers here. If I can ask you, if you were to distill this problem into one sentence, what would that be?
One sentence. All right, so I'll focus on, I want to be a successful partner and influencer within my organization.
Okay, great. And I'm hearing a lot of almost like different emotions in you. I don't know if this is like frustration, concern, fear. Like if you were to put some feelings from your side to this, you would say what?
I would say a lot of it is really fear. It's I was thinking about this very recently. I got the role in a really uncomfortable way, and so it was really one of those things where, the person who had the role was great, and was was strategic, and for me, there's a part of me that's trying to live up to that, and I just don't know that I ever could.
Okay. And you mentioned you've been in this role for 18 months. It sounds like you've been doing some thinking about this. This isn't the first time.
Yes.
So give me some thoughts on how do you, like the problem statement you mentioned was, how do I become more of a partner influencer? So what have you thought about? What are your ideas?
So I would say that a couple of the things that have occurred to me um, is really trying to get very good at asking for feedback.
Okay.
And that's and I'd say it's kind of a dual issue for me. One, I don't really believe that I'm very good at asking for feedback. I know it's like scary. I could coach anyone in my organization about how to go about asking for feedback, but it's a little bit like physician heal thyself. No.
Okay.
So so really being able to get very, very purposeful about that. But then there's also a little bit of kind of fear connected with that. The organization is not always they're not always really good about, I wouldn't say that we're a feedback focused culture.
Okay. Tell me more about that. Succinctly, you mean what?
That it's it's kind of a maybe a hit or miss a little bit,
Okay.
and there are lots of people there that are really great at it. I would guess that it's not really part of our culture, so it's not as if it's just a, hey, you know what I mean, you just constantly
Sure.
are offering and asking for feedback, and so
Yeah.
it's a little bit it's a little bit scary to me. It's a little bit
Yeah, and
scary.
I sense that part of it, and I asked you, well, what have you thought about? And you said, well, feedback. However, this is why I'm a little concerned about that. Maybe and just because we're running this a little faster, but maybe tell me, when you say things like, I want to be a partner, what does that look like in your mind? Like, what does success look like? Like, you'll know you achieved that when, fill in the rest of that statement, if you don't mind.
Um, I will know that I have achieved that when I have an opportunity to either offer my opinion, or that my opinion is sought.
Okay.
It is less about, that's why I used the word influence, because I'm not measuring it by, did I win? Did I,
Right.
oh, that was my idea, or, did I win that? It's, am I being able to offer thoughts around it?
Yeah. And
And
if I hear you right, you mentioned, am I being asked?
yes, and I would say too, am I being asked? Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Uh, what if you do nothing? Like, you've been thinking about this for a while. You've been with the organization 10 years. You mentioned 18 months in this role. Like, let's just say you don't do anything. What happens then?
Geez, I don't think I could do nothing.
Okay.
Right? Meaning it's been noodling in my mind for, for too long, and the thought of doing nothing just seems, uh, it seems counterproductive. It seems counterproductive to me. I feel like I have to do something, and I feel like, even like more and more recently, and I'd say even more so with, with COVID, that it's like, okay, come on, right? It's like, you can do this. You can
And
do.
what's driving that aspect? Like, some people would say, I have a nice job. It's perfectly fine. And you're saying, no, there is no way, I'm not doing anything. So what's driving that?
I would say what's driving it is that thing, and we've certainly talked about it in some of these sessions, is for the work to feel meaningful for me.
Okay.
For work to be meaningful, I feel it'll be even more meaningful for me if I can kind of add this layer.
Yeah. And let's say we're not having this conversation. There's no coaching. You're saying, I'm not going to do nothing. I'm going to do something. So what's the first next step you look at?
Um, hmm. First, I guess first next step that occurs to me is, because I am a reader and a researcher, it's like, okay, let me go and start to unpack some stuff, right? So let me pretend as if I am, you know, coaching someone that I would in my organization, and just try to kind of almost to disassociate myself for a moment and say, okay, let's take a look at it, right? What are the ways to, what are the different ways and the methodologies to to ask for feedback, and probably even in a sense to to kind of maybe work on that way that I can best write and articulate to my manager.
Okay.
Here's what I've been thinking. Here's what I've been feeling.
Sure.
Here's what I'd like. And so I mean, that's kind of where, okay, yeah, that's kind of where now my brain is taking me there.
And I hear you saying this part, I'm going to do some more research. Tell me about someone that you trust, you're close with. Who else would you reach out to for some information or some help on this, whether inside or outside the organization? Where else could you turn?
Um, yeah, I mean, I would say that, I can think of a couple of people that, I can actually think of two people in particular that used to work at the organization and
Okay.
don't work there anymore.
Okay.
Actually, if I think about it, I can even think of like maybe three or four people. They don't work there anymore, but there's a part of me that would feel comfortable with that, because they know the organization, they know
Sure.
the players.
Yeah.
So you know, I don't know, there's a part of me that says that there could be some benefit with that,
Yeah.
because it wouldn't have to kind of describe too much.
Okay. And just because we're just running a portion of the demo, obviously this will go on. And for anyone listening, Ann and I will be continuing this conversation some other time. But for right now, just running the demo. So one last question, Ann. Why does this matter to you?
I would say that it goes back to it goes back to the meaningful. I mean, I really, even though I've got those things that I'm really good at, and that I'm really kind of, in a sense, guessing what was why I got the promotion. There's, even though I am within shouting distance, so to speak, of retirement, there's still a lot more that I know I can learn, and there's still a lot more that I know I can do. And it just, I'm not a person that's very happy kind of just staying in a status quo for too long.
Okay, perfect. We're going to pause. Sarah's going to come back on screen. Thank you very much. The audience is applauding wildly, like it's almost embarrassing. But Sarah's going to talk to us in chat, and we're going to come back to you. So if you don't mind staying up, and we're going to chat, all three of us. Go ahead, Sarah.
All right. And the first question that I have for you all is just in the chat, if you can put in, what did you see Matt doing or not doing? Based on the construct that we just brought forth. So what did you see him doing or not doing?
All panelists and attendees.
Yep,
please.
All panelists and attendees. We see nodding his head, open-ended questions, active listening, right? Even over the Zoom, right? It's so odd. Like we have to look at the camera, not actually at the other person's video to, make eye contact. Great questions, no solutions, right? We're not offering, which ironically, right, you've got somebody who is a paid consultant, right, who be like, you want to become more strategic? Like, I have got some solutions for you. It's literally the business that I am in. But yet we are not offering any kind of solutions. Bringing out the vulnerability, being fully present, being encouraging. Loved the question, why does this matter to you? Great. I love that somebody puts in great eye contact, right? We're on video, we're not even in person, but it is possible, and this why video is so important. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring you into Mentimeter. I'm gonna ask you, we were all listening to the same conversation, and it was about 10 minutes. So what was the problem? What is Ann's problem? Like in a short phrase, we all listen to the same thing. So what problem is she trying to solve?
I like how interested Ann is in this. She's like,
I know, this is the fun part where we talk about you as if you're not here listening to it. All right, so it doesn't feel valued, being heard, wanting to become an influencer, to achieve partner, being able to influence more, values not supported in her work, perhaps confidence. These are kind of scrolling a little slowly.
She wants to be more of an influencer. She wants to be more of a partner, feeling valued, worried she isn't as good as her predecessor. Look at the differences. Notice the nuance in this, not living up to the expectations. Yep. I would offer, as we look at this, where the problems she doesn't want time to pass by. She has something to give, and I want to make damn sure that the time I'm spending on the rest of this earth, that I contribute to something. Look at what's going on in the world. There's enough stuff going on. I want to be part of the solution. I don't want to waste time. And you notice that she said, I'm not so concerned about, is it successful? These influencing, meaning I want to steer something. I want my own values to be seen and heard and be somebody of value on this. Anxiety about a new position, perhaps.
So one piece of this is to say, if we just name off all the things that you put in, we took out all the duplicates out of the things that you're putting into the Mentimeter, we could easily come up with probably kind of 10 distinct problems, which I know this sounds like, it's like, oh my gosh, I thought I had one problem. I actually have 10 problems. One piece of this is, before we so easily go down the problem-solving route, we don't even know what the problem is. Or we have multiple problems and we don't even know which one Ann cares the most about. And so oftentimes when we do these, this always happens this way, and I will tell you, when we do demos in class, we have heard a range of problems that, and every single one of them, it turns out the same way. That we end up realizing that the first thing that we have to do is clarify what the actual problem is. So with that, just to ask for you, Anne, despite the virtual setting, despite, you know, the 100 strangers listening in, how was the coaching experience for you?
It was great, and I would say that I mean, first of all, it's you know, you guys are always very calming, right? So I will admit I didn't really sleep that well last night, but you know, worried a little bit about this. But yeah, you guys are calming. But I would say that also what was happening was through, as quick as it was, there were things that were occurring to me that I don't know that I necessarily give time for. So it's not like they were huge insights. It was more just don't always take the time to kind of unpack my thinking.
Yeah, and for the people that were watching this demo, remember, we only ran this for 10 minutes, so we're not trying to solve a problem here. I'm just trying to be a really good listener for Anne, ask some questions that she's feeding me. I'm not trying to drive her to something. Remember, the original problem statement she said was about 5 or 6 things about, here's my job, I'm new in the role, I've been with the company 10 years, I'm working. I'm not going to go after any of that. I'm just going to help her think about these things. Now, you notice, and this happens for everyone, so I'm not just calling Anne out on this, but you notice that when you ask a question and the person starts thinking, their eyes will immediately break contact. I have no idea why humans do this, but the vast majority of the time we look up to the left or the right, but we do not look directly in the eyes of the person. So as a leader, as a coach, one way you know the person is processing information at very, very rapid speeds. And so she thinks it's happening, is not even aware of time. As the coach might be like, well, how much time are we going to wait here? As soon as their eyes break contact, that's your cue to not talk. They're processing, they're thinking. When they're ready, and when Anne was ready, her eyes came right back to me. As the coach, as the leader, this is a telltale sign someone is processing in a very rapid and they're very focused. They'll come back to you when they're ready for another question. But to a person, they will not look you in the eyes while they're thinking about something really deeply. It's just human. Okay?
All right.
So
give Anne a virtual round of applause.
Yes, Anne, thank you so much. It was fantastic.
Thank you, Anne.
Okay, I know we have some questions here. So Sarah, if you don't mind, I'm going to run through just a couple of quick slides. And if you want to start triaging some questions, because I know we're about 10 minutes out, and I think the demo is more powerful than going through a lot of the content. As you mentioned, don't hog the airtime. I tried not to do that. Perhaps most of you saw that the majority of my questions were open. There were a couple of them where I didn't know what her feeling was. And so I kind of said, hey, what is it? Was it these? And I kind of threw them out there. If I'm wrong, then she can correct me. And if I'm right, she can be like, yeah, those are it. But in the beginning, I want to make sure I understand what her problem is and that she's able to describe it. That's why I asked for the one sentence. And then what are you feeling about this? What's your thoughts about how you feel about it? In essence, what we brought you through here is, Einstein was asked, if he had an hour to solve a problem, he'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem. This is what we were mentioning. We asked you what was Anne's problem because all of you had so many variety, and that happens with any one of these. Normally, there's 2 or 3 levels underneath what the stated one is. If we jump after the solution right in the beginning there, we're actually solving the wrong problem. And this happens constantly. We do this in the military, we do this in industry, wherever. I'm trying to think literally about what the problem is a little deeper and then getting into some of the solutions, but not before that. All right. So any Q&A we should take now? I know one of them was about mentoring versus coaching.
Yep. And so one question that came in was the mentoring versus coaching. I think our experience would say that for mentoring, that implies that you have some sort of experience that you're imparting, whether that's technical or from a leadership standpoint. And yes, I am giving a piece of that experience in addition to coaching. So there's a coaching teaching kind of happening. Coaching, especially the tool set that we just walked through, can be peer-to-peer, it can be leader to team member, it can be team member to leader. And so this is a tool set on our team that lives and breathes, really, any problem comes up. Now, I will tell you, sometimes somebody will say, I don't want you to coach, but I just want you to tell me the answer. But for our team, they'll know, like, yeah, you're not going to solve it for me. Because as soon as we go into the open-ended questions, it almost becomes more of a default mode to say, I really value your thoughts, and I want to know how you're thinking about that. Another question
Sarah, as
that
you,
came
as you
in.
read that off, can I just jump in really quickly?
Mhm.
And this is where I know we're running this on an hour because we run this in a really expended program and bring senior leaders to this even. It's not to say that you can't drift into mentoring or drift into, I'm going to give you advice. I'm going to give you my perspective. I'm going to give you my thinking. And perhaps if Ann and I were talking more and more, perhaps I might have something of value to add to her. But I put this on the front end of everything so that I make the right decision of when should I be in collaboration mode? When should I just be a great person who's listening to her? Because going in and giving her solutions is going to short circuit all that thinking on the front end. So yes, you can go into that, but I'm going to use this on the front end. Sarah?
Another question is, as she prepares an action plan, do you provide feedback or do you let her run with it? And Matt, if we could go back to the triangle slide, I think this gives a good kind of a time, it's not really a timeline, but it's a good flow of what hopefully the conversation looks like. Somebody comes and they have a problem they're trying to solve. The first mode I'm in is I'm trying to expand, I'm trying to help them, expand their thought, open their aperture, help them see. You've thought about this a lot. What options are you considering? Who else have you spoken to about this? What other perspectives should you be considering? Then I'm trying to kind of very gently with the questions, not go a particular direction, but perhaps enable them to sort. And so of all those options, which do you like the best? What are all the good things that could happen if you pursue that option? What are some of the negative consequences that could happen if you pursue that option? And so we always, and whenever we do this, somebody asks, like, what if they pick the wrong solution? Like, it'll be that, like, dead direct. Like, but what if they pick the wrong thing? Like, I know the best solution. They've picked the wrong one. And so you do have a choice. And this is where the discernment comes in. Now, if they're going to cause harm, it is dangerous. The company cannot afford them to make that mistake. Perhaps you do say, we got to talk about this one. But before I give that advice, I'm going to say, what are all the bad things that could happen if you go down that road? I want to see if they can see around that corner. Perhaps I think something negative is going to happen, and perhaps I do let that thing happen. And they come back and say, it didn't go the way I thought, and I'm back into coaching. So there's a discernment moment that we all have to take.
And the other way you can ask that is just by simply saying, hey, what could go wrong? If they go, hey, nothing go wrong, this is the answer. Okay, well, just tell me, if I forced you, if you had to pick something that could go wrong, what would it be? Because I want to see if they can think their way out of it as well. You saw me doing this with Ann because we were on such a tight timeline. I just said the middle point here, hey, let's say we're not having this conversation. What's the next thing you do? And that's when she started thinking about, I'm going to reach out to some people that used to be in the organization. And she's still thinking about this, by the way, folks. She's probably smiling right now, but she's still thinking about this because we've activated all of those. I'm going to jump us ahead as Sarah looks for some other questions there because Sarah built this slide and I'm a real car guy. And so I love this when I saw that we pulled some car stuff into content. I was like, oh, this is so good. It's such a great picture. And I know the story of this. So the closed question would be, can we make our car go faster? We're trying to win the 24 Hours of Le Mans. It's like the car builders pantheon of automotive engineering. And it's actually not about going faster. It's how do we win Le Mans? And that is, how do I cross the finish line first? And so what Audi did was they use a diesel engine because it requires, it's a more efficient fuel. And so it gets better gas mileage, kilometers per liter. And so it actually has fewer stops. And therefore they won it 3 years in a row by using the first time with diesel engine. So that's a good example of, let's ask more open-ended questions. We have skipped some slides for today because I want to make sure we get to the questions and we get you out of here on time. We will provide all the slides and recordings so you can look through. We have a whole bunch of open-ended questions on helping people see, coaching questions, and coaching questions on helping them think. And so if you want to know how do we use this on sales call, we use this constantly. If we're consultants, our number one value is seek to understand. The way we do that is by asking open-ended questions. I want to know something about the person. I want to know something about the organization. I need to know about the issues, and I need to know about how they look at working together. I probably need to put all four of these things together before we are going to pitch a single service or a single product, because I don't want to come in and just say, here's what you need, when the stated problem might not be that. And I want to have a relationship with person because actually if not, then I don't want to be in a transactional organization. And so we'll provide all of these as well. Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you for the rest of it if you don't mind.
All right, a few additional questions. One is, how long does it take to achieve this level of coaching? And I would say, yes, it does take practice, but the real kind of learning here is just simply shifting to open-ended questions in your day-to-day. And so a really good place, and I know it's like, oh, let's practice on our family members or friends or whomever we've got around us. But the next time somebody comes to you and you think, even if it's a simple thing, even if it's something that your 10-year-old is bringing to you, am I just going to shift to be like, well, how would you solve that? And just kind of push the I try and see what happens when you shift your questioning to open-ended. If it becomes a default mode in your daily interactions, then when somebody comes to you and it's a real coaching session, this becomes obviously much, much more easier. So for us, it's just kind of a constant thing that we're always calling to. What are the open-ended questions that we can ask? A couple of questions on how often should I coach? Should I do these things that my company provides? And we would say yes, if you're really wrestling with some problems. And a good frequency, we typically do once a week or once every 2 weeks with our executive coaching clients. Does it need to be that frequent? No, but in cases where we're kind of working on a particular issue, it can be really, really valuable. In the deck, you'll see some action items and just some ways to practice and apply this, yes, to that problem solving, but also to how do I incorporate open-ended questions to solve problems in the organization, as well as into kind of my sales routine, so to speak. As we like to do, we want to make sure we're leaving enough time, a couple minutes here, just for your feedback. So we're going to put you back into Mentimeter. And the question that we always ask is, what are you going to give a try? So what are you going to do differently? This is not feedback to us, but it's feedback to each other. So we're going to crowdsource a cheat sheet of things that you all might be willing to try in the upcoming couple of weeks. And then we'll send this PDF to you so that you can see what everybody else is going to give a try. So listen intensely.
As Sarah's bringing this up, I know we have a lot of questions on like the duration, the timeliness, the frequency. Just think about this. We did this with Anne, and this was about 10 minutes. And so the more I integrate it in, it less becomes like, oh, it's going to be a quote unquote coaching session. Here we go. Watch this attending behavior like it's all serious. It just becomes, hey, what problem are we working on? And we'll get issues, or I'll work with Sarah, or Sarah will come to me and I'll say, well, what are you thinking? Where's your mind at right now? Like, this is a 10-minute intro. So it becomes part of not only the lexicon, but it becomes part of your behaviors. It does lead to trust. It does lead to empathy. It does lead to valuing the other person, because I'm starting with, I want to know everything you're thinking and how you're feeling about this. Then when you ask, I might be able to, in certain areas, provide my expertise or find it for you. But this can be really quick touch points throughout your day. Fundamentally, and I know we're rushing this one because this is such a powerful tool that we have in our leadership curriculum, fundamentally this will change your relationships, both personally and professionally.
All right, now as we transition back over, we're going to pop up a poll for you all. This is feedback to us, so if you wouldn't mind filling it out, it helps us be better for the next time. It's just 4 quick questions for you all to answer, and that poll is up. As you have a chance to do that, we'll put up our website. I know we had some questions on the virtual classroom and how you can figure out what the rates are. Are those published? Yes, they are. They're on our website. And Courtney will go ahead and put that in the chat as well, so you can just go ahead and click on the link. There is a PDF. The other thing you can do is just shoot one of us an email, and we will get you all of the information if that is easier for you. And we are happy to do that, in addition to finding out more information about Include. We have 2 webinars left in this series, our free webinar series that we're doing. So we hope you all join us next week and the week after. Same bad time, same bad channel, as Matt likes to say.
That's right.
Appreciate you all being with us. Huge thank you to Anne for being the brave soul to do that. We so appreciate her, both from a working relationship standpoint, but also being brave enough to do a demo, because it's the most powerful thing versus just talking through the tools. So thank you all, and we hope you have a good day.